Welcome to Infidelity Diaries. Explore the secrets and stories of infidelity with us.
Sam hugged his wife Jane at the departure gate, feeling a slight unease. She was heading to an important seminar, leaving him alone with her mother, Mary. "Take care of Mom, Sam. Show her around the city. She's been looking forward to this trip," Jane said with a smile. "Don't worry, everything will be fine," Sam replied, nodding. "I love you. See you in a week," Jane added, kissing him. "I love you too. Good luck at the seminar," Sam responded with a slight smile. She turned and headed toward the gate, leaving Sam alone with his thoughts. He felt a bit uneasy about the upcoming time with Mary. She was a strong and confident woman, and Sam was never sure she completely liked him. A few minutes later, Mary appeared in the arrival area. Tall and elegant, she immediately caught everyone's attention. She looked incredibly sexy in a short skirt and a tight top that accentuated her slender figure. Her long legs and graceful movements instantly drew the eyes of the men around. "Hello, Sam. Amsterdam is even more beautiful than I remember," Mary said with a smile, her French accent adding a special melody to her words. "Yes, it's a beautiful city. I thought we could start by visiting the Rijksmuseum," Sam replied, trying to hide his nervousness. "That's a great idea. I've wanted to visit it for a long time," Mary answered with a slight smile. The next day, Sam and Mary went to the museum. Walking through the halls, Sam couldn't help but notice how people turned to look at Mary. Her style and posture attracted attention, and he felt a strange sense of pride. "You know, Sam, you're a great guide. Jane is lucky," Mary said admiringly, as they stood in front of a Vermeer painting. "I try to please," Sam replied, smiling. Their relationship began to improve. Sam felt that the initial awkwardness was fading. Over the next few days, they explored the city, visiting hidden gems like the Anne Frank house and vibrant flower markets. Mary's enthusiasm was contagious, and Sam began to enjoy their time together. One evening, while walking along the canals, Mary looked at Sam with a mischievous gleam in her eye. "Do you think Jane will be jealous if she finds out how much fun we're having?" she asked. "Maybe," Sam said, laughing. "But what she doesn't know won't hurt her." Their words hung in the air, their meaning deeper than they dared to admit. There was something unspoken between them, a growing attraction that neither of them dared to voice. The next morning, Mary suggested spending the day at a spa. Sam hesitated, but her charm won him over. They spent the day enjoying massages and relaxing by the pool. The intimate setting heightened their awareness of each other, and the flirtation, which had started innocently, now took on a dangerous edge. "This is so nice," Mary sighed, sinking into a lounge chair by the pool. "I haven't felt this relaxed in a long time." "You deserve it," Sam replied, his gaze lingering on her. "You're even more beautiful when you're relaxed." She looked at him, a playful smile on her lips. "Careful, Sam. You're treading on thin ice," she said teasingly. "Maybe I like the risk," he replied, surprised by his boldness. Their days were filled with such moments, glances that lasted a bit too long, touches that seemed accidental, but were not. The initial attraction had become something more tangible, something that was becoming harder to ignore. One evening, after an especially pleasant day, they returned to the apartment. Jane called to check in, but their conversation was brief. After Sam hung up, there was a tension between him and Mary. They opened a bottle of wine and sat on the balcony. The city lights softly illuminated them. Their conversation was light and full of laughter, but the tension was undeniable. As the evening went on, they drew closer to each other, the line between right and wrong blurring with each passing second. And in that moment, everything changed. The attraction that had been simmering between them finally broke through, leading them down a path they both knew was as thrilling as it was dangerous. Looking into Mary's eyes, Sam knew there was no turning back. The days ahead would be a whirlwind of emotions and stolen moments, but for now, they were consumed by the intoxicating excitement of their forbidden connection. The next day, Sam and Mary decided to explore some of Amsterdam's lesser-known corners. Mary looked particularly stunning today. Her short skirt and tight top accentuated her figure, drawing admiring glances from passers-by. Sam felt a mix of pride and slight tension as he walked beside her through the bustling streets. "How do you feel about visiting a place that not many people know about?" Sam asked with a mysterious smile. Mary smiled back, her eyes sparkling with interest. "That sounds intriguing. Where are you taking me?" It's a surprise, Sam said, taking her hand and leading her through narrow alleyways to a hidden garden tucked behind an old building. When they entered the garden, Mary stopped, looking around in awe. The place was quiet and secluded, with beautiful blooming trees and benches hidden in the shade. "This is incredible," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Sam led her to one of the benches, and they sat down, enjoying the tranquility and beauty of their surroundings. Their conversations became more personal, and they shared their secrets and dreams. "Sam, have you always known where to find such wonderful places as near?" Mary asked, her voice soft and gentle. "Not always," he replied, looking into her eyes. "But I knew this place would be perfect for you." Mary blushed slightly, her gaze becoming more intense. "You know, Sam, I'm starting to feel something special between us." Sam felt his heart race. "I feel it too, Mary. It's something that's impossible to ignore." Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by the sound of thunder. Clouds quickly covered the sky, and it began to pour. They ran to the nearest shelter, but were already soaked. Under the roof of an old building, Sam and Mary looked at each other and laughed. Their wet clothes clung to their bodies, highlighting every line. "Well, this definitely added some excitement to our day," Sam said, laughing. "Yes, it did," Mary replied, her gaze becoming more sensual. "But you know, sometimes rain makes moments more unforgettable." She stepped closer to Sam, their bodies almost touching. He felt her warm breath on his skin, and in that moment, the world around them seemed to stop. Mary slowly raised her hand and ran her fingers through his wet hair, her touch both gentle and thrilling. "Mary," Sam whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "Sam," she responded, her voice full of passion and desire. "I can't wait any longer." She slowly leaned in and touched her lips to his. The kiss was soft, almost tentative, like a tentative step into the unknown. Sam closed his eyes and surrendered to the moment. He felt her lips become more insistent, her body pressing closer to his. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her closer, and their kiss deepened and became more passionate. In that moment, they forgot about everything else. Water streamed down their bodies, mingling with their kiss, adding to the sensations. It was like being swept into a whirlpool of emotions, where there was no room for doubt or regret. Mary pressed closer to him, her hands sliding down his back, feeling every muscle. Sam responded to her touch with equal passion, his hands exploring her body, pausing at every curve. They were like two fires merging into one, unable to resist the attraction. At some point, Mary pulled away, breathing heavily, her eyes full of fire and desire. "Sam, I know," he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "But I can't stop. And neither can you." Their passion was like a storm, unstoppable and all-consuming. They knew it was wrong, but in that moment, nothing mattered except their desire. When the rain subsided a bit, they slowly pulled away from each other, breathing heavily. Mary looked at Sam, her eyes full of mixed emotions. "We can't keep doing this, Sam," she said, her voice filled with regret. "It's too dangerous." "I know," he replied, feeling the same pain. "But how do we stop when it feels so right?" They stood there under the roof, listening to the rain, realizing that their relationship had changed forever. The days ahead would be filled with passion and a struggle with forbidden feelings. After the rain stopped, Sam and Mary returned to the apartment, their wet clothes clinging to their bodies, creating a sense of close intimacy. Amsterdam at night had a special charm. Narrow streets and canals, illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights, created a romantic atmosphere. "I thought we could take a walk through nighttime Amsterdam," Sam suggested, his voice still trembling from the recent events. "That sounds wonderful," Mary replied, her eyes sparkling in the streetlight. They changed into dry clothes and stepped outside. The night air was fresh, and the sounds of the city had softened, as if it were preparing for a night's rest. Sam and Mary walked slowly along the canals, enjoying the silence and seclusion. I never thought Amsterdam could be so beautiful at night, Mary said, her voice full of admiration. It really is a special place, Sam agreed, especially when you're walking with someone you care about. Mary stopped and looked at him, her gaze deep and penetrating. Sam, I have to admit, I feel something special for you. It's wrong, but I can't ignore it. Sam sighed, his heart pounding in his chest. I feel the same way, Mary. But we have to be careful, Jane. Mary placed a finger on his lips. Not now. Let's just enjoy this moment. They continued their walk, their hands brushing against each other, each touch filled with electricity. Soon they reached a small bridge over the canal, where they stopped to admire the moon's reflection in the water. This city is full of secrets, Sam said quietly. But the biggest mystery for me has been you. Mary smiled, her eyes shimmering with emotion. You're a mystery to me too, Sam. I've never met anyone like you. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of music coming from a nearby cafe. Mary smiled and pulled Sam by the hand. Come on, let's see what's happening there. When they entered the cafe, they were greeted by a warm atmosphere and the sounds of live music. A small band was playing jazz compositions on the stage. Mary sat at a table by the window, and Sam followed her. Do you like jazz? Sam asked, observing her reaction. I love it, Mary replied, her eyes sparkling. There's something about it that makes the heart beat faster. They ordered a glass of wine each and sat, enjoying the music and each other's company. At one point, Mary stood up and extended her hand to Sam. Shall we dance? Sam smiled and took her hand. They moved to the dance floor, and the music enveloped them. The dance was slow and sensual, their bodies moving in unison, and their glances spoke more than words. You dance wonderfully, Mary whispered, her voice soft and tender. So do you, Sam replied, holding her tighter. I feel like we're getting closer. Their faces drew nearer, and at that moment, they forgot about everything else. Sam felt his heart start to beat even faster as their lips met again in a passionate kiss. This kiss was full of fire and desire, and they both knew that this moment would change them forever. When the music stopped, they slowly pulled away from each other, their eyes filled with passion and tenderness. We need to get back, Mary whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Yes, we do, Sam agreed, feeling their bond grow even stronger. They left the cafe and headed back to the apartment. Along the way, they continued to hold hands, each step bringing them closer to the inevitable. When they entered the apartment, the tension in the air was palpable. Sam, wait here. I want to surprise you, Mary said with a mysterious smile, disappearing into the bathroom. Sam remained alone in the living room, his thoughts racing. He couldn't believe how quickly everything had changed. A few minutes later, the bathroom door opened and Mary emerged, dressed in a sexy latex outfit and mask. Her figure in that outfit was stunning, and Sam felt his heart start to race again. What do you think? Mary asked, her voice full of seduction. Sam stepped closer, his eyes unable to leave her body. You're amazing. Mary smiled and stepped closer, her arms wrapping around his neck. I want this moment to be unforgettable. They began to kiss passionately, their bodies drawn to each other with fierce intensity. Sam felt his desire grow with each passing second. He slowly started to remove the latex outfit, savoring every moment. His hands slid over her body, taking off the outfit, feeling every curve of her figure. When the outfit was completely off, they fell onto the couch, their lips never parting. Their kisses became more and more passionate, and Sam felt his body responding to each touch from Mary. She was so close that he could feel her breath on his skin, driving him wild. They made love, forgetting about everything else in the world. Their passion was unstoppable, like a storm that consumed them completely. Each moment was full of fire and desire, and they both knew that this was only the beginning of their forbidden connection. When morning came, they lay beside each other, breathing heavily and looking into each other's eyes. Mary snuggled close to Sam, her eyes full of mixed emotions. A week had passed since that passionate night. Sam and Mary tried to behave as restrainedly as possible, but the tension between them was palpable. Every glance, every touch seemed filled with electricity. They knew they were playing with fire, but they couldn't stop. One evening, Sam came home late. Jane was still away, and Mary was sitting on the couch reading a book. She looked up at him and smiled slightly, her eyes glinting with interest. "How was your day?" she asked, closing the book. "Good, but a bit tiring," Sam replied, taking off his jacket. "And yours?" "Wonderful. I took a walk around the city and did some shopping," Mary replied, her voice soft and calm. "Is Jane coming back soon?" "Yes, in 2 days," Sam said, sitting down next to her. "Do you miss her?" Mary nodded. "Yes, of course, but I'm glad I got to spend time with you." Tension hung between them. Sam looked at Mary, and his thoughts returned to that night. He knew he couldn't allow himself to succumb to this temptation again, but his desire was too strong. "Mary, we need to talk about what happened," he began, his voice quiet. "I know," she replied, her eyes filled with mixed emotions. "It was wrong, but at the same time, it felt so right." "I feel the same way," Sam said, his voice full of pain. "But we can't continue this. It will destroy everything." Mary leaned closer, her eyes burning with passion. "Do you really believe you can ignore this? Can you forget?" Sam sighed. "I don't know, Mary. I just know it's wrong." She pressed against him, her lips almost touching his ear. "Sam, we have to be honest with ourselves. Our feelings are real." Sam felt his heart beating faster. He knew he was standing on the edge of a precipice, and one wrong step could destroy everything. But he couldn't resist her attraction. He embraced her, and their lips met again in a passionate kiss. Their kiss was full of fire and desire, and Sam felt his body responding to every touch from Mary. She was so close that he could feel her breath on his skin, driving him wild. But suddenly, their passionate moment was interrupted by a loud knock at the door. They pulled away from each other, breathing heavily and looking at the door. "Who could that be?" Sam asked, his voice full of anxiety. Mary got up and went to the door, opening it. Standing on the doorstep was a man Sam didn't know. He looked anxious and agitated. "Sorry to bother you, but have you seen Jane?" "I'm her colleague, John. We were supposed to meet today, but she's not answering her calls," he said, his voice full of concern. Sam felt his heart stop. "Jane was supposed to come back in 2 days. She didn't mention a meeting." John shook his head. "That's strange. We agreed to meet today, but she's not answering. I hoped she might be here." Mary looked at Sam, her eyes full of worry. "Could something have happened?" Sam nodded. "We need to find out what's going on." They quickly gathered and headed to Jane's office. On the way, Sam tried to reach her by phone, but to no avail. His anxiety grew with each passing minute. When they arrived at the office, it was dark and empty. They entered, and their footsteps echoed in the empty corridor. Sam felt his heart pounding in his chest. "Jane," he called, his voice full of worry. But there was no answer. They continued down the corridor, and suddenly Sam heard a faint sound coming from one of the offices. He opened the door and saw Jane sitting at her desk, talking on the phone. "Jane," Sam exclaimed, his voice full of relief. Jane looked at him, her eyes widening in surprise. "Sam, what are you doing here?" "I just finished an important call." "Your colleague said you were supposed to meet, but you weren't answering your calls. We were worried," Sam explained, trying to calm down. Jane smiled. "Sorry, I was so busy that I completely forgot. But everything's fine. Thanks for coming." Sam felt his tension begin to subside. He glanced at Mary, and their eyes met. He knew there would be many challenges ahead, but they would face them together. Jane was supposed to return in 2 days, but she managed to finish all of her work earlier. Deciding to surprise her husband and mother, she chose not to inform them of her early return. That day, Mary decided to make the evening with Sam as unforgettable as possible, knowing their time together was coming to an end. She put on her best lingerie, a lace set that highlighted her slender figure. Looking at herself in the mirror, she felt a mix of excitement and anticipation. Sam was sitting in his room, his thoughts in disarray. He knew that their passionate moment with Mary was a mistake, but he couldn't deny the intense attraction he felt towards her. Suddenly, the door opened and Mary entered the room. Her appearance stunned him, and he felt his heart beat faster. "Sam, Mary whispered, her voice full of seduction and desire. I want this moment to be unforgettable. She moved closer, her eyes burning with passion. Sam felt his body begin to respond to her attraction. He rose from his chair and stepped towards her, their lips meeting in a passionate kiss. This kiss was full of fire and desire, and they both knew that this moment would change them forever. Mary slowly began unbuttoning Sam's shirt, her hands trembling with excitement. Sam embraced her, feeling the warmth of her body through the thin fabric of her lingerie. Their kisses became more insistent and passionate, their bodies pressing against each other, and each moment was filled with electricity. Sam gently ran his hands down her back, removing the top part of her lingerie. Her skin was soft and warm under his fingers. He felt her breath becoming more ragged and quick. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer, their bodies moving in unison as if they were made for each other. Mary, Sam began, but she silenced him with a kiss, her lips full of passion and desire. Don't say anything, she whispered, her voice husky with emotion. Just be here and now. They fell onto the bed, their hands and lips continuing to explore each other's bodies. Sam felt his desire growing with each passing second, and he could no longer hold back. He removed the remaining part of her lingerie, savoring every moment. Her body was perfect, and he couldn't get enough of her touch. They made love, forgetting about everything else in the world. Their passion was unstoppable, like a storm that consumed them completely. Each moment was full of fire and desire. At that very moment, Jane opened the door to the apartment. She quietly walked down the corridor, not wanting to break the silence, hoping to surprise her husband and mother. As she approached Sam's room, her heart stopped at what she heard. She opened the door and saw Sam and Mary, lost in passion. What is going on here? Jane exclaimed, her voice full of horror and pain. Sam and Mary froze, realizing their secret had been exposed. They pulled away from each other, their faces pale with shock. Jane stood in the doorway, her eyes filling with tears, unable to believe what she was seeing. Jane, it's not what you think, Sam began, his voice full of desperation. Not what I think? Jane shouted, her voice full of anger and pain. You're cheating on me with my mother. How could you? Mary lowered her head, her face full of shame and regret. Jane, forgive me. It was all a mistake. A mistake? Jane stepped forward, her eyes blazing with anger. This is betrayal. How could you do this? Sam approached Jane, his eyes full of tears. Forgive me, Jane. I don't know how this happened. I never wanted to hurt you. But Jane could no longer listen. She turned and ran out of the room, her heart shattered. Sam and Mary were left standing, realizing their actions had devastating consequences. Jane ran out of the apartment, her heart shattered. Sam rushed after her, but she had already disappeared into the night. He stopped at the threshold, breathing heavily, feeling unbearable pain and guilt. Jane, wait, he shouted, but she was already out of sight. He returned to the apartment where Mary stood, her face full of tears and despair. What have we done, Sam? She whispered, her voice filled with regret. I don't know, Mary, he replied, feeling the weight of the situation. But now we have to find a way to fix this. They sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Sam tried to find a way out of this mess, but his mind was clouded with guilt and fear. Mary seemed broken, her shoulders slumped, and her eyes filled with tears. A few hours later, Sam received a message from Jane. She wrote that she had gone to a friend's place and wanted him to pack his things and leave the apartment before her return. Sam felt his heart clench with pain again. She wants me to leave, he said, showing the message to Mary. Mary nodded, her face full of despair. You have to go and talk to her, Sam. We need to find a way to make this right. Sam packed his things and left the apartment. He didn't know what awaited him, but he knew he had to do everything possible to regain Jane's trust. He headed to Jane's friend's place, hoping for an honest conversation. When he arrived, Jane's friend, Sarah, greeted him with a cold look. Jane doesn't want to see you, Sam. You hurt her deeply. I know, Sarah, he replied, his voice full of pain. But I need to talk to her. Please, give me a chance to explain. Sarah sighed and nodded. All right, Sam, but if you hurt her again, I won't let you near her. Sam entered the house and found Jane sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. He approached her, and his heart broke seeing her suffering. "Jane," he began, his voice trembling, "I'm so sorry. I don't know how this happened. I never wanted to hurt you." Jane looked up at him, her eyes filled with rage and pain. "How could you, Sam? How could you do this to me?" Sam sat down next to her, his eyes full of tears. "I don't know, Jane. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. I'm willing to do anything to make it right." "You don't understand, Sam," Jane said, her voice full of despair. "This isn't just a mistake. It's a betrayal. You destroyed everything we had." Sam took her hand, his eyes pleading. "Please, give me a chance to make it right. I'm willing to make any sacrifice to regain your trust." Jane was silent, her eyes full of tears. She pulled her hand away and turned away. "I don't know, Sam. I don't know if I can ever forgive you." Sam felt his heart clench with pain again. He knew this would be a long and difficult journey, but he was willing to do everything possible to win back her love and trust. Meanwhile, Mary stayed in the apartment, consumed by her thoughts and feelings. She knew her actions had led to the destruction of her daughter's happiness, and this feeling ate away at her. She couldn't stay there and decided to leave to give Jane and Sam a chance to sort out their feelings without her presence. She left a note for Jane, asking for forgiveness, and expressing her deep love for her daughter. Mary understood that her actions were unforgivable, but she hoped that in time, Jane could understand and forgive her. Jane returned to the apartment a few days later and found the note from her mother. Reading it, she felt mixed emotions, anger, pain, but also a small sense of relief knowing that her mother was also suffering from what had happened. In the following weeks, Sam did everything he could to regain Jane's trust. He attended family therapy sessions, sought ways to atone for his mistake, and showed that he was willing to do anything for her forgiveness. Jane slowly began to open up and express her feelings. Her pain was immense, but she understood that if there was even the slightest chance of rebuilding their relationship, she had to try. The process was slow and painful, but with time, they began to see a glimmer of hope. They knew it would take a lot of effort, patience, and understanding, but they were both committed to trying to heal the wounds and rebuild what had been broken. Several weeks had passed since Sam and Jane's lives were turned upside down. Each day was a struggle, and every step seemed difficult. Sam did everything he could to regain Jane's trust. He signed up for family therapy, constantly showed his dedication, and tried to be there despite all the challenges. Jane watched his efforts. Her heart still ached, but she saw how genuinely Sam was trying to change the situation. It gave her a faint hope that their relationship could be salvaged. One evening after a therapy session, Sam and Jane sat in the kitchen, silently sipping tea. The silence was tense, but not like before. There was a spark of understanding and hope in it. "Sam," Jane began quietly, "I see how hard you're trying, and I want you to know that I appreciate it." Sam looked up, his heart beating faster. "Thank you, Jane. I'm willing to do anything to regain your trust," Jane sighed. "It's not going to be easy. I need time, but I want to try." Sam nodded, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. "I understand. I'm ready to wait as long as it takes." Meanwhile, Mary tried to keep her distance. She knew her presence might only make things worse. She wrote letters to Jane expressing her regret and love, but she didn't impose herself. One day, Mary received an unexpected letter from Jane. It contained a request for a meeting. Mary's heart began to beat faster. This could be her chance for forgiveness. Mary arrived at the designated place, a small cafe on the outskirts of the city. She nervously looked around until she saw Jane sitting at a table by the window. Jane looked up and nodded, inviting her to sit. "Hi, Mom," Jane began, her voice full of mixed emotions. "Hi, dear," Mary replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm glad you wanted to meet." Jane sighed. "I've thought a lot about what happened, and I needed time to process everything." Mary nodded, feeling her heart clench with pain. "I understand, and I'm ready to accept whatever decision you make." "I'm angry at you, Mom," Jane said, her eyes filling with tears. "But I also understand that you're human, and we all make mistakes." Mary took her hand, her eyes full of regret. "Forgive me, Jane. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you more than anything." Jane squeezed her mother's hand and sighed. "I want to try to understand and forgive, but we need time and work on our relationship." Mary nodded, feeling hope fill her heart. "I'm ready to work on it. I'll do everything to regain your trust." They sat in silence, holding hands, understanding that a long road lay ahead of them, but they were ready to walk it together. In the following months, Jane and Sam continued attending family therapy. They learned to express their feelings and work on rebuilding trust. It was difficult, but they both saw progress. Every small achievement gave them the strength to continue. Mary, on her part, also worked on her relationship with her daughter. They spent more time together, discussed the past, and made plans for the future. Jane saw that her mother was genuinely remorseful and trying to change her life. One day, as Jane and Sam sat on the couch, embracing, Jane looked at her husband and smiled. "I'm starting to believe that we can overcome this," she said, her voice full of warmth. Sam kissed her on the forehead and whispered, "I believe that too. We can do this." In that moment, they both felt that their love was stronger than all the trials. They knew there would still be many challenges ahead, but they were ready to fight for their happiness. Meanwhile, Mary received an invitation to a family dinner. Jane wanted them all to come together and try to start anew. Mary gladly accepted the invitation and began preparing for the meeting. When the evening came, everyone gathered around the large table in Sam and Jane's apartment. It was an important moment for everyone, and they knew it was the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. "Let's toast to forgiveness and new hope," Jane suggested, holding up her glass of wine. Everyone raised their glasses, and a special atmosphere hung in the air. It was a moment of reconciliation and hope that they had all been waiting for. "To our family," Sam said, his voice full of determination and love. "To our family," they all echoed, smiling at each other. That evening, they felt their bonds growing stronger. They knew there was still a lot of work ahead, but they were ready to walk this path together, supporting each other and believing in the best. Several months had passed since that memorable dinner. Time went by, and the relationships between Jane, Sam, and Mary gradually began to heal. It was not an easy journey, but each step was crucial for their shared future. Jane and Sam continued to see a family therapist. These sessions helped them openly discuss their feelings and find new ways to understand each other. Jane slowly began to forgive Sam, seeing how sincerely he was trying to change his life and regain her trust. Mary, in turn, also saw a psychologist to deal with her feelings and cope with her guilt. She tried to be there for her daughter, supporting her and showing that she genuinely regretted what had happened. One evening, as Sam and Jane sat on the couch, embracing, Jane looked at her husband and smiled. "Sam, I want to talk to you about the future," she began, her voice quiet and confident. Sam nodded, his eyes full of attention. "Of course, Jane. What do you want to discuss?" "I think we need to consider a fresh start," Jane said, her eyes glowing with hope. "Maybe move to a new city. Start over." Sam smiled, feeling his heart fill with joy. "I agree. That sounds like a great idea. Where do you want to start our new life?" Jane thought for a moment. "I've always dreamed of living by the sea. Maybe we could move to a coastal town?" Sam kissed her forehead. "That sounds wonderful. I'm ready for any change if it helps us start anew." In the following weeks, they began planning the move. It was exciting and a little scary, but they knew it was their chance for a new life. Mary supported their decision and even helped them search for a new home. The day of the move arrived. Jane, Sam, and Mary stood in front of their new apartment in a small coastal town. The sea air was fresh and salty, and the sound of the waves was calming and brought a sense of peace. "Welcome to our new home," Sam said, hugging Jane. "This is the beginning of a new chapter," Jane replied, her eyes shining with happiness. Mary smiled and hugged them both. "I'm so happy for you. This truly is a new beginning." They began to settle into their new home, and each day brought new joys and discoveries. Sam found a job with a local airline, and Jane started teaching art at a local school. Their lives gradually fell into place, and they felt they were starting a new chapter of their lives. One evening, as they sat on the beach watching the sunset, Jane felt her heart fill with peace. "Sam, I'm so happy we took this step, she said, her voice full of warmth. And so am I, he replied, holding her hand. It wasn't easy, but we made it. They sat in silence, enjoying the moment and feeling their love grow stronger each day. They knew there would be more challenges ahead, but they were ready to face them together. Mary, watching their happiness, also felt more at peace. She understood that her mistakes were part of the past, and now she could start a new life close to her daughter and son-in-law. Over time, Jane and Sam learned to forgive each other and themselves. Their relationship became deeper and stronger, and they knew they could now handle any difficulties. One sunny morning, Jane felt a slight dizziness and weakness. Concerned, Sam suggested she see a doctor. After the examination, they received unexpected news. "Jane, congratulations, you're pregnant," the doctor said with a smile. Jane and Sam exchanged surprised looks. They hadn't expected this turn of events, but the news brought them immense joy. "We're going to be parents," Sam whispered, his eyes filled with the joy. "This is incredible," Jane replied, her face glowing with happiness. They returned home and shared the news with Mary. Her eyes filled with tears of joy, and she hugged them both. "This is the beginning of a new life for our family," she said, her voice full of emotion. Jane, Sam, and Mary knew that many joyful moments and new challenges lay ahead. But they were ready to face everything together. Their love and support for each other had helped them overcome the toughest moments. And now they could look to the future with confidence.